So, Simon, thanks for joining us on our latest podcast, the impact of the CFO on the growth journey of an SME business,
Pleasure.
and obviously the views of you, Simon Coultas, the CFO of razorblue.
That's
Thanks
good.
for joining us.
No, thank you. Thanks for the invite, Paul. It's a pleasure to be speaking to you again.
Good stuff, good stuff. So, Simon, just for our audience, perhaps you can introduce yourself and tell us your background up to the point of joining razorblue.
Yep, certainly. So my name's Simon Coultas. I'm the CFO here at razorblue. Joined here May of last year, so been in the business 10 months now, which has just gone the blink of an eye, believe me. But prior to that, my background is predominantly within the manufacturing industry arena. Started off out of university with a company called Parker Hannifin, large US corporation. Was there with them for about 3 years or so, and during that time lived out in the Czech Republic for a year, based not too far from Prague, which was fantastic. Came back to the UK and worked for a multitude of industries, so including British Aerospace up in Newcastle, Smurfit Kappa as well, based out of their West Auckland office, and more recently with Venator Materials, which used to be part of the Huntsman Corporation. So joined there on an interim basis as an interim business finance analyst. Left there 8 years later, so just last year, left there as finance director for their colour pigments and timber treatment business. And during that time, travelled extensively, worked globally, being based out in Kuala Lumpur from October 2018 through to February 2020, literally a month before lockdown kicked off. So based out there looking after the APAC region. Which
Got home in time.
Literally by the skin of my teeth, literally. So I went from being away from home for all the time, but then to be based in the home office. So one extreme to another. But amazing experience there. And then, with issue challenges that we're at, that Venator were facing, sold the colour pigments business, and that gave me the opportunity to move out of Venator and subsequently to the position I now hold here at razorblue.
And prior to joining razorblue, Simon, what were the kind of highlights of your career? Those significant achievements that you look back on and go, yeah, that was a real achievement.
I think, for me, always is one of the biggest impressions I had was being based out in Asia. It was a fantastic experience, both, personally and professionally. I think I grew certainly as a person by doing that. And a good achievement for me was, say, going in on an interim basis to what was Huntsman Corporation as a business finance analyst, and progressing right through to be finance director in a relatively short space of time, but having some amazing and fantastic experience, having worked with some extremely talented people, and from that a fantastic friends come from that as well. So some really fabulous experience.
And what was it that took you out to Asia, Simon?
There was certainly some challenges within the APAC region out there, and I was given the opportunity to go out there and to kind of turn that around, to really sort of galvanise the team, not just within Malaysia, but across China, Australia as well. And there was some real challenges throughout that time, having to recruit people, but also having to have some difficult conversations regarding people's future as well. So it was certainly very character building, and I think anybody starting off in the career, I would certainly encourage them to get that kind of exposure, because it really gives you an appreciation of how critical, how important teamwork is, culture is, etc., and being able to work with those different cultures as well. It's a fantastic experience. Absolutely.
I was going to ask you that. Is that something you would recommend? And obviously, you've already said yes.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Highly recommend that. It always amazed me how I could get on a plane, within an hour and a half, an hour, I could be in Germany, for example. Very different mentality, very different way of working culturally, and how you kind of interact with people. So it was, very, very interesting from that perspective. But again, some of the projects that I was involved with throughout my time there were just brilliant, and some of the other roles I held there was chairman of the Dioxide Pension Trustee Fund as well, and various roles. I held a board director position whilst I was based in Kuala Lumpur for one of the joint ventures that we held out there. So again, good sort of depth of experience, but also the opportunity to build those critical soft skills as well. The team building.
And obviously, I know your story, Simon. I know how important people and culture are to you, and I'm certain that viewers and listeners today will pick up on that, because that's a constant theme throughout your career. And I know some of the achievements we're going to come on to talk about that you've had at Razor Blue. But perhaps you could just maybe help people understand, if they have that opportunity, what was it about your life circumstances at the time that enabled you to accept the opportunity to go to Asia Pacific? That's perhaps unique.
Well, I mean, I'm very lucky to have a very sort of supportive wife, and that. I mean, when I took that opportunity, I was based out there by myself. My family were back here in the UK, but it was a case of looking in what that would give us as opportunity as a family in the future. And yes, I was away from home. My son was just about to start university. My daughter was just about to start at comprehensive school. So, it wasn't the right time for them to be going to the other side of the world.
Yeah.
But we made the most of that. And I think that's got to be key with this. You've got to see these kind of things as an opportunity and see how they can work for you. So this gave the opportunity for me for my family to come out, to have like vacations out there, to experience that part of the world and see that, something which we might not have done otherwise for that kind of duration of time. So it's challenging and it's tough. There's no denying that. But I think it's when you succeed and you complete that and you say, yes, mission complete, it's a huge confidence boost. It really is. And to be able to leave that legacy behind is fantastic. And even now, I still speak to people in Asia. Some of my former team, if you like, they'll get in touch and say, well, what do you think about this? Can I just talk this through you? Which is fantastic. It's lovely. It really is.
Testimony to the relationships that you had. And I wanted to just focus on that a little bit, because it is unique. Not everybody has that opportunity. But perhaps one final question before we move on to, looking at Razor Blue. Did you kind of throw yourself into work? I suppose my initial perception is you're going out to a foreign country to work. Maybe you end up working 12, 14, 16 hours a day. Or was it, very different, and actually you immerse yourself in the kind of local culture?
It was very much immersing in the culture as well. And, yes, there was a lot of work. Yes, there was a lot of long days. But, I wanted to make the most of that, let's say it personally as well, and get as much as possible from that. Whilst I was out there, I learned scuba dive, for example, kind of travelled extensively and really just immersed myself in that, talked to people, visited different places, got 2 armfuls of tattoos as well. So
wasn't like The Hangover though, when they get tattoos.
No, definitely not.
Planned decisions.
Definitely not. No. So
thanks for sharing that, Simon. I do think it's it's unique experience that you can benefit from and share with people. So just moving on to look at Razor Blue, what was it about the circumstances and the aims and ambitions of Razor Blue that attracted you to that opportunity?
For me, I was looking for a business that had ambition, that was looking to grow, to develop, not a company that was looking to sell off different aspects of it and almost go contract. You're looking at how Razor Blue has grown and developed over the years in a relatively short time frame as well. That really struck a chord with myself. But also, like I mentioned, I was looking for somewhere with a good culture as well. Where you could come in, you could influence, you could make your mark, etc. And from my first meeting with Dan and with Lee, who's one of the non-exec directors, I very much felt I could work with these guys. They were very call a spade and everything. You stand and they really gave a very, very good, candid and honest impression of razorblue.
Mm-hmm.
So that was great. And again, when I had a second meeting and met Mark, who's our commercial director. Again, very level-headed guy. Everyone's very passionate, which came across strongly. And really, that's been lived up to since I've come into the business. I'm very fortunate and to work with a lot of from a board level, very supportive, very passionate people. And then been very patient with me, not having that sort of IT technical background. My knowledge is turn it off and back on. If it doesn't work, that's it.
We won't talk about last Friday, no?
No, definitely not.
If anybody was online at that point, they'll know what we mean, but we'll move on.
That's it. But, it's been very supportive, but very open to suggestions, thoughts, ideas, and having that candid conversation, those candid conversations.
Mm-hmm.
That's
so again,
very much
all
lives
around
up to it.
People in the culture wanting to get that right.
Yes, and that's really, really important. A lot of people, I think, when they're looking for jobs, they say, okay, well, I want a salary of X, and clearly the salary is important. That's almost a given. But I think what a lot of people don't necessarily consider is the culture. What does that look like? What does it sound like? You can see a website and that can say we've got these certain values, but does it come across in the interview when you meet people? Can you see that they're living that as well? And with talking to Dan, talking to Lee, Mark, etc., you could very much see that there was that care, that pride, that passion, and they're all extremely talented people, and very proud to work with them.
Did you ask them? Interestingly, did you ask them any questions to probe that at an interview stage?
Yes.
You were obviously you had a couple of opportunities that you were exploring at the time, right? If that's important to you, how would somebody as an interviewee go in and assess that? You can look at the walls and look at the kind of glossy things, but how would you assess the culture?
I think it's about listening. It's about that listening to understand, but also not just listening to what they're saying, but see how they are kind of non-verbally as well. Because you can say something one way, but the message from the face, etc., is telling you something very, very different. And there was very much a feeling of that honesty, that transparency. There was no sort of sugarcoating. It was clear that there were challenges, which also spoke to me, from my past experience, and I very much relished that.
Yeah.
So
that's
as you
said,
that's absolutely critical, I think, to really sort of pressure test that as you go through that. Yes, you don't know until you get in there and you get your feet under the table, but doing that pressure test and asking the same question in different ways. When you do have a second interview, revisit those kind of questions. Do you get a consistent answer?
Yeah.
That's
good advice. Yeah, it's often something I do. Ask the same question in 2 or 3 different ways.
Yeah,
people know exactly what I'm doing, but I do it. and so you're in a new job. How do you then, Simon, when you approach a new role, set your priorities and the timescales for those?
Well, I mean, I must admit, that was a bit of a challenge when I came into razorblue, because I had a certain perception of how things were compared to, with what had been shared with me already. And very much when I got in there, got in here, it was a case of just trying to get under the skin of the business and getting to know people. I think that was really a key to understanding what those priorities needed to be. What were people looking for? What was the exam question, really?
Yeah.
And listening to people, and like I said before, listening hard to understand, not just listen to the words that are being said, and seeing how you can work with that to formulate a plan and an approach that is going to meet the demands of the business, give the business what it needs, but also cementing and building those relationships, from day one, because that's key. And first impressions do count, and that's a two-way process. That's a two-way process. But from talking with people, you start to develop that understanding of there was a consistent theme in terms of what was needed, what was being looked for, and then it was a case of looking in terms of, okay, how can we pull that together? How can we start to deliver on that? And that was really the formative time, the initial time of just understanding that really.
Mm-hmm. And you've mentioned it twice now, Simon. Listening to understand. I think the temptation as a manager, as a coach, as a mentor is to kind of jump in there and help and address the first issue that's actually raised. How do you go about doing that? How do you listen to understand?
Well, it's exactly that, really. It's a case of not jumping in. Giving people that chance to share what is needed, and not being too quick to jump to the conclusions or think, oh, well, I've done this before, etc.
Mm.
Understand those nuances, those sort of peculiarities, really. It's about listening hard. It's about and having some repeated conversations as well, clarifying your understanding as well. We can be told one thing, but we can all interpret different things differently. Feeding that back, this is what I'm understanding from what you're saying. This is, am I right? And getting that sort of understanding, that clarification as well, and being able to demonstrate that you are listening. If that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. And one thing I find useful is what's called, and it comes from a book called The Coaching Habit, but it's the AWE question, AWE. And what else? And what else?
Yeah.
And what else? And as you say, if you ask that perhaps same question, or even just that, and what else is on your mind? What else is challenging you? What else is bothering you? And then you start digging deeper, don't you, and get into the real answer, not the surface level problems.
You do, and you have those same kind of conversations with different people, and it's starting to see those. You start to see common themes coming out from that, and when you start to see those common themes, that really drives what the priority is and what those priorities are.
Yeah.
And I was always keen to have kind of those conversations with, such as Dan, to say, look, this is what I think we should be doing. This is the kind of direction that we should be going. This is what we need to be looking to tackle first, and having that sort of plan. It was, I must admit, it was one of those situations you go in, yes, I've got my idea in terms of my 30, 60, 90-day plan, etc. But in many ways, that went out of the window within about 30 minutes or so.
So it leads on nicely then. Obviously, given all your experiences, given what you then uncovered, were there any quick wins?
If I'm totally frank, probably not, to be fair.
Okay, yeah.
Because there was a lot of kind of resolving to do and to remedy challenges that sort of existed and have potentially been there for a significant sort of period of time on that. But, one thing that was key, and I come back to the team thing as well, my team here, I'm so proud of each and every single one of them. When I first came in, I was looking after obviously finance as CFO, but Emma, who's my financial controller, she's been here a little bit longer than me. I think she's got an extra week on me, so she started out a week before. And I still remember that day on the Friday when I came, and I think within an hour and a half, Emma and I were sat together looking at VAT. So it was literally straight into it and that. Yeah. But yeah, super proud of Emma. We've got Julie, who joined us a little over 6 months ago as assistant management accountant. Again, she's come in and she's just really embraced everything and has really just got stuck in, understanding the business, and seeing how she's working with the team is amazing. And we've got Cody, who's our accounts receivable. Again, he's just life and soul of the party. He really is. He's very, very energetic guy. Brilliant to spend so much time with and also to work with as well. And then we've got Xanthi, who's in accounts payable. She's got the longest tenure with just over sort of 2 years. So from a finance team perspective, we've got relatively short tenure in the business, which brings some challenges, but in many ways, it brings fantastic opportunity because you haven't got the legacy of, well, we've always done it this way. And super proud of all of them, and especially at the Christmas party when they all got awards and stuff. So that was fantastic to see.
Yeah, we know from conversation with Dan, obviously that was the first time some of the people in finance have been recognised those company awards. So and really testimony to your management skills, I think, Simon. As you said, Emma had been recruited prior to your involvement, but had only been in the business 1 week. That could have been a real challenge, couldn't it? Like,
it could.
Well, the person I'm actually working for isn't the person that initially brought me in, and that isn't what I thought was going to happen. So, there was probably some hearts and minds to win there in your first week.
Very much so, and it was interesting. We had a day out as a team in York a few weeks ago, and just sat there, we're having lunch and that, and it was just really crazy to think 12 months ago I didn't know any of these guys. And now it's like I've known them for years. It's a really strong team that enjoys spending time with, both in the office but also on a social level as well. We've had some very, very good, interesting times out, which have been great fun.
And with Cody, sounds like you've always got the energy and the fun.
Oh gosh, yes, yeah. No, when Cody's around. They're all fantastic. They really, really are.
And from a point of view of the strategic aims of the business, what are your priorities then, Simon?
I mean, my priorities really is to give the business that clarity and understanding and the reality of what's possible. Not just what's possible today, but what we can grow and develop into. To really be there to steer, to guide, to challenge. And also to listen as well, be objective, and to support fellow directors, but also the business as well. And you only have to look at the history of razorblue to see that the ambition that is there, from Dan as CEO, but also from the rest of the business holistically. That there is that real strong bond within the business and desire to see it grow and develop and prosper. And I have absolutely no doubt that will happen and will continue to happen as well.
How have you supported those strategic ambitions and aims then?
It's been through a case of giving clarity, very sort of candid challenge and conversation. And guidance as well, but also listening to other people's perspectives, but certainly giving that timeliness, that accuracy to the detail, to the numbers, so that we as a business and as a board can make structured, well-informed decisions that we will reap benefit from going forward as well. And acting very much as that sort of business partner as well. You've got to go beyond being a finance person and think about that bigger picture as well. So that's really sort of, I think, the direction it's helped.
Yeah, and how have those decisions and quality of information, how has that impacted on the business?
Well, now we're in a position we can make more timely decisions and thinking about that future and having those strategic plans, those roadmaps to deliver on what we want to do and our targets for the future. But it's giving that clarity, it's giving that insight. That's how it's really supported the strategic direction of the business.
Yeah. And I suppose if you were looking at that, it's really interesting, that word business partnering. If you're looking at the fundamental difference between an FD and a CFO, Simon, in your opinion, what are those?
I think very much as a CFO, obviously, you've got that board position in majority of businesses, and I know titles do vary from business to business.
Yeah.
But I think there is more of that holistic responsibility and accountability as well to the business, to deliver that benefit for the shareholders. And we all have that, regardless of what level we are in the organisation. But it's certainly become more apparent that that's key to the role, as the CFO. And I think it's, as the CFO, having that breadth of experience, but also having that depth of experience to bring to the table as well. And it's both from a technical accounting perspective, if you like, but also from a soft skill perspective, and having that balance is absolutely critical to be successful, because as an individual you can't do everything, but you need your team around you to support that. And your team isn't necessarily just the people that directly report to you, but your team is the business. Here, yes, I've got a finance team, I've got a purchasing team and risk and compliance team, but I've also got razorblue team holistically. And how big is your team? Well, it's the business in my perspective, and being able to draw on that, because I think that really casts a positive shadow through the business and hopefully can inspire others.
Yeah. And if you were giving, and if you were giving some tips and advice on people wanting to achieve those upper echelons of of the finance career, what would you say to somebody that's perhaps newly qualified and on that upward trajectory? What would they need to do to ultimately become a finance director or CFO?
I go back to the point. It's about getting that breadth and depth of experience. Always be prepared to roll your sleeves up and to listen. I came in, and yes, I've been doing such as month ends, and I've even been posting journals. But that casts a really good impression to people as well. But get that experience, get the breadth of experience, get the depth of experience. Talk to people. Try to get yourself a good mentor, somebody that you can relate to, that you can have very honest conversations. When the chips are down, which there will be at times, that can. You can get that. You can get that support. I've got that. Yeah, no, I've got that with the guy that recruited me into Huntsman, Gary, who's my very good friend at Venator. He's very much a mentor and guide as well. So you get that experience, get other perspectives, talk, learn, experience different industries as well.
And hindsight's a wonderful thing, isn't it? So we're going to ask you to kind of reflect on both your career and the kind of 10 months at razorblue. What would you have done differently, if anything, or perhaps maybe not done differently? You can address that if you like. Or what's been the biggest learning from your career looking back?
I think the biggest learning for me is, it's to be honest with yourself and, continually to keep reviewing where you want to go, what you want to achieve, and to understand what success means to you as an individual, because it's very different from person to person. I think if I look back on all of my career, the low point, if I can say that, was where I went to Darlington Building Society for a period of time, and prior to that I was at Smurfit Kappa, so it was like going from a company that made boxes to one that ticked them. It just wasn't for me. But I learned so much from that, because I hadn't done such as the necessary due diligence beforehand. But I've taken that forward, and that's something that I utilised when I was looking at going to Huntsman, coming to razorblue. So that was a really strong lesson for me. So, there has been some challenges along the way, as there inevitably will be. But those are always invaluable learning opportunities as well. And you you might not necessarily recognise that at the time,
Mm.
but fast forward 12, 24 months, whatever, and you can look back and say, yeah, it was tough, but we did it.
Yeah. And what's been the biggest learning from the last 10 months then?
Expect the unexpected, I think.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I suppose it's as well, it's kind of confirmed you make the most of absolutely every opportunity and look at the potential for the future as well, and be excited about that, because you've got that all in your hands to take and shape it and enjoy it.
Yeah. And one final question then, Simon. What advice would you give to a CEO, business owner that's looking or considering the appointment of a CFO? What value will they bring, and what advice would you give to that person?
I think I suppose that the first advice I would give would be to, when you're going through that recruitment process, don't just be looking at the technical side or what people say they can theoretically do. Pressure test that. Get to understand it.
Yeah.
And also how important fit is as well. Is this somebody you can have an honest conversation with, that you can trust and you can confide in?
Yeah.
As well. And I think that the value to a CFO coming into the business is that it can relieve the CEO of a lot of their current workload, so that then they're more really, they've got more time to focus on looking at strategy and looking at the future, and you've got somebody else as a confidant to support and assist in that as well. So it's I think it's an enabler for time as well.
Absolutely.
Hopefully Dan would agree with that if he's listening.
we'll loop back in and bring him in, but
That's it.
Absolutely, feedback that I've heard and that Dan shared, Simon, absolutely. I think you're all as a team headed in the right direction.
Yeah.
The razorblue business continues to win more awards. In fact, I think in just before you joined, I seem to recall sending you a snippet of Dan at one stage saying, "This is the guy you're about to join."
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. It only feels like yesterday.
Yeah, I was at the awards evening that night, and great to see.
Yeah.
Well, Simon, thanks very much for your honest account of the last 10 months and for sharing your career. A huge amount of brilliant advice and nuggets of information that you've shared with us today. Glad to see your successes. We will post a link on the platforms should anybody wish to engage with Simon and ask any questions, ask any advice. I'm absolutely certain you'll be more than happy to do so. But Simon, thanks for joining us this afternoon, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks very much, Paul. Okay, speak soon.
Cheers. Take care.
Thank you. Cheers. Bye.